So here we are in late 2025, and the war in Ukraine is at this really tough, really complicated crossroads. On the one hand, you've got this intense diplomatic push for peace. But on the ground, the fighting just grinds on, and the costs are absolutely devastating. Okay, let's dive into this and really try to unpack the deep, deep divisions between what's happening on the front lines and what's being discussed at the negotiating table. To really get a handle on what's at stake in all these high-level talks, we've got to start right at the source. We're talking about the front line, with the soldiers who are living and breathing this war every single day. Their perspective, it's everything. Meet Bogdan. He's a soldier with Ukraine's 31st Brigade, and he asks this incredibly simple but powerful question: what choice do we have? And man, that just perfectly sums up the feeling in the trenches, doesn't it? It's this mix of just complete bone-deep exhaustion, but also this stubborn, unwavering resolve to see the fight through to the end. And check out this number, 62. That's how many days Bogdan and his buddy Ivan spent trapped in a tiny basement right on the front line. I mean, can you even imagine? For over 2 months, they were totally cut off. Their only lifeline was a friendly drone. That's how they got food, water, even cigarettes. This one story, it just tells you so much about what this war has become. Static, super high-tech, and just unbelievably brutal. So, what happens when you bring up the idea of trading land for peace to these guys? Well, the answer you get is, let's just say it's not diplomatic. Andre, a sergeant in the same brigade, he doesn't mince words. For him and so many others, any deal that sacrifices the land they fought and bled for, well, it would make all their sacrifices and the loss of their comrades completely meaningless. Okay, so while soldiers like Andre are digging in their heels, determined to fight on, there's a whole different conversation going on in the halls of power. So let's zoom out from the mud of the trenches and take a look at the intense diplomatic push that's underway to actually end this thing. And a huge player in these talks is now the United States. The Trump administration is really leaning on Kyiv to get to the negotiating table. And a major part of the deal they're proposing involves Ukraine giving up territory. And this table, well, it lays out the problem perfectly. You've got a total deadlock. The U.S. is pushing for land concessions and says Ukraine probably won't be joining NATO. Ukraine is saying, no way, we're not giving up an inch of land, and we need real security guarantees. And then you have Russia, demanding the entire Donbass region and a permanent no to Ukraine and NATO. I mean, these positions, they're miles apart. There's just no overlap right now. All right, so if diplomacy is stuck in a gridlock, what's the actual reality on the ground? Militarily, what's happening? Let's break down the real data from the battlefield. A big part of the why behind this American push for a deal comes from this assessment from the U.S. president. The White House is basically operating on the assumption that Ukraine is on the back foot, so a negotiated peace is the only realistic way out. But is that really what's happening? How does that claim actually hold up when you look at the numbers? Well, according to some deep analysis from the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces have captured just 0.77% of Ukrainian territory in the entire year of 2025. This isn't a blitzkrieg, it's a war of inches, literally. And the price for those tiny, tiny gains, it has been absolutely staggering. It's estimated that for every single square kilometer of land Russia has managed to take, they've suffered 83 casualties. 83 casualties for 1 square kilometer. That just shows you what a brutal meat grinder of a conflict this has become. So why the stalemate? Why is it so slow and bloody? Well, it comes down to technology. The sky is just saturated with drones, and that makes it almost impossible for either side to gather up a big force for a major attack without being spotted and, completely obliterated. The result is this bloody, grinding war where nobody can land a knockout punch. So, we have a diplomatic deadlock. We have a military stalemate. The big question is, where does it all go from here? Well, analysts are basically looking at 3 potential paths forward. Okay, path number 1, a U.S.-brokered peace deal, the one we've been talking about. Path 2, and this is the really scary one, a Ukrainian military collapse. This could happen if Western support just completely dries up. And then there's path number 3, which a lot of people think is the most likely. The war just keeps going as a protracted stalemate. But here's the thing. This war isn't just happening over there in a bubble. Its ripple effects are being felt all over the world. The human cost just keeps climbing. The UN is reporting that civilian casualties shot up by 24% this year alone. And now, with winter setting in, Russian attacks on energy infrastructure are leaving hundreds of thousands of people freezing in the dark, without any heat or power.
And the war is hitting global markets directly. When Russia backed out of the Black Sea Green Deal and attacks on ships started escalating, global wheat prices immediately went through the roof. It shows you a direct line from a drone strike in the Black Sea to the price of food around the world.
So, let's pull all these threads together. You've got the incredible sacrifice of the soldiers, the intense pressure from diplomats, the reality of a military stalemate, and this massive global fallout. It all leads us to the central, agonizing dilemma of this whole conflict. It's really a clash of two very powerful ideas. On one side, you have this desperate, urgent push for peace, to stop the bloodshed and the suffering of civilians and calm down the global chaos. But on the other side, you have this rock-solid belief in the fight for sovereignty, the principle that you can't just trade away your nation's independence, and that you absolutely cannot reward aggression. And all of this brings us to our final big question. It's a question that doesn't have an easy answer. Not for the diplomats in Washington, not for soldiers like Bahand freezing in a trench, and really not for any of us watching this unfold. When a war is stuck in a stalemate, when the cost of fighting is so incredibly high, but the potential cost of compromise feels even higher, what really is the price of peace?